So this is something I've wanted to do for a little while. I love my PC, and it's basically been the way it is now for probably about a year and a half. But the way it is now was not bought at one time. Like the case was bought probably 2 years ago, and an old system was changed into this case. And then I think the graphics card was probably bought 3 months later, and also used in the older system. And then eventually, when I switched to AM4, I bought a motherboard, CPU, and RAM, but it wasn't this Ryzen 2600 and 16 gigs of DDR4. It was a Ryzen 2200G and 8 gigs of RAM. And then, 3 months later, that was changed over to the 2600 and 16 gigs of RAM, and my 2200G and 8 gigs of RAM moved over to my HTPC, as that needed an upgrade at the time. And then I think the SSD was changed a year and a half ago. It was originally a 120 gigabyte SATA, 2.5-inch SATA based one, and now it's a 256 gigabyte M.2 NVMe based SSD. So almost everything changed in waves. Even the cooler, I think I probably ran the stock cooler for a few months, and then bought a new 212 Evo, and then I bought a Noctua fan to put on it. So again, the way it is now, it's been like that for about a year and a half, but none of it was really done all at once. So I've always been curious, really, what did I pay for this thing, or what's it worth? And the prices haven't really changed too much over the last year and a half, so I figured I would try this PCPartsPicker. I haven't used this website in probably 5 years, so hopefully I can figure this out, but I think we just add part by part. So I'll start with the case, which is usually what I do start with. And yeah, let's see, where's the search? So my case is a Vantex P400S. And I have to hold my microphone, so I'm typing with one hand, which is... so P400S. I don't know that it really matters. Mine is black and red. Well, there's two versions of the black and red, because there's one where the shroud is red. Mine is not that one. Mine looks like this one. It looks like this might be in US dollars. I'm going to change that to Canadian. I can change it back just to see both when we're done. Oh god, it reset that when I changed it. Okay. The S just has the sound dampening. It's got a 3-speed fan controller. It's got some extra magnetic fan filters that it came with. It also came with the RGB magnetic strip, which I wasn't expecting. Like I said when I got that case, came with a lot of stuff I wasn't expecting. Definitely didn't pay $415 for it. I paid about $120 to $130, but I bought it in a store, so I didn't pay shipping. Yeah, so I'll have to keep that in mind with all this too. That's Amazon Prime, so that might have free shipping. So, okay, well, I'll just leave that there. That's about $10 less than I paid for it, but again, that was about 2 years ago when I bought it, so the P400 was still relatively new. It's been updated since. They added more airflow to the front of it recently, but it's still basically the same. It's still a good case. It's one of my favorite cases still. So we'll do power supply next. So mine is a EVGA. I think it is a 650, 600 or 650. It's a 650 GQ, something like that. It's fully modular, and it's gold. That one's semi-modular, so it's not the GQ, GS. Yeah, it's the GS. So this isn't available anymore, I'm guessing. So I might have to pick something very close. Again, it was gold. I'll just put EVGA gold. Probably the G3 would be the closest thing now, I guess. As long as it's gold and it's fully modular. And that's not, you know what? Power supplies are hard to find right now. This is a bad time to do this. I think I paid about $130-ish for it. But power supplies are incredibly hard to find right now at this moment. With everything going on in the world right now and in China, power supplies and motherboards right now are the hardest things to find. So I'm just going to go with this one. The case ended up being a little bit cheaper than what I paid for it at the time. So it's probably okay if the power supply is a little bit more expensive than what I paid for it at the time. But it's gold, semi-modular, whatever. Ignore that. Mine's an EVGA 650 watt gold, fully modular. But we'll go with that. Okay, so my motherboard, I'm probably not going to have that anymore either, because mine is a Gigabyte B350 gaming or something like that. Yeah. So I'm going to have to go with B450, which is basically the same thing. They both work with the same processor. I'm running a Ryzen 2600 on a B350 gaming. Again, motherboards are hard to find right now. I'm going to go with this. Mine's a full size, not a micro ATX. But that's probably about what I paid for it. So I'm going to go with that one. That's, I guess what I would go with a B450 now, obviously. Geez, you wouldn't go with a B350 if you couldn't even find one these days. Again, there's not much difference between a B350 and a B450. But obviously, I bought that motherboard probably 2 years ago and paired it with a 2200G, like I said originally, because none of this was all done at once. This is funny, as I'm completely oblivious as to what my computer's worth. I'll do the CPU next. It's a Ryzen 2600. Again, I have to type with the mouse hand, so I'm holding a microphone. So Ryzen 2600. Yeah, I paid less than that for it. Oh, no, maybe not. I think that's basically what I paid for it. It had dropped since. I bought that about a year and a half ago. But it had dropped to 189 was the lowest that it was for quite a while. And now it's probably getting harder to get again. Realistically, you'd go with the 3600 if you were doing this now. But again, I'm trying to keep it as close to what mine is. Yeah, if it's still available and the price is still the same. 3600 would be a bit more expensive. And 209 is actually basically what I paid for it. So cooler, I have the 212 Evo. The case came with two fans. It's got an intake and an exhaust, 120 millimeter fans. But I did add a fan to the cooler. I didn't use the stock Evo fan. I actually have a Noctua on it. So where do you add fans? Okay, case fan. Noctua. It's a PWM, 120 millimeter. So I'm going to assume it's that one. I think that's about what I paid for it. It was roughly the same price as the cooler. See, I didn't pay that much for the cooler, I don't think. I think the cooler was on sale when I bought it. But I probably paid about $35 for the cooler. And I paid about $30 for the fan, which is funny. The fan, I joked, is basically worth as much as the whole cooler, but it's quieter and it looks nicer and it's going to last a lot longer. The fan on the Evo is kind of cheap. If you don't want to change the fan on it, I wouldn't even recommend getting the Evo. I would get the Black Edition. The Hyper 212 Black Edition has the Silencio fan on it, which is just a better fan in general. I think the bearings are probably better, so it's probably going to last longer, but it's also quieter. Or get the Black Edition RGB if you want RGB. I don't really care too much about RGB. My case came with it. So my RAM is G-Skill, 16 gig, 3000 megahertz. It's Ripjaw 5. And I didn't find anything. Oh, what's up with that? Whatever. 16, it likes the space between 16 GB, I guess. So mine's Ripjaw 5. It's red, I think. Not that it matters. It says 16 gigs, 3000, but it's 2/8, not 1/16. You would think this would be a lot. There we go. Ripjaw 5, 3000, 2/8. Oh, that one has no price. Well, what the heck is up with that? Oh, there we go. Geez, that's surprisingly cheap. That is surprisingly cheap. That's less than I paid. I think I paid about $120 for my RAM. But again, that was about a year and a half ago. And again, I paid less. I paid about $130 for the power supply, I think. So power supplies were pretty cheap at that time. Yeah, it was on sale when I bought it from EVGA. So I'm going to leave that because that about balances out, I think. Yeah, we'll leave that. So storage. So my main one is an ADATA M.2. And I don't know how it's going to work in the search because ADATA, there's no space. Right, and it's a 256 gigabyte. Yep, and again, they like their space between. Wow, you think the search would just find that. Now, it's not the Pro, if I remember, but I think it was an 8200, maybe. Maybe it's this one, but I didn't pay that much for it. I think I paid like $60 for it on sale. You know what? I'm going to go with what I would go with now, but it will be about the same price because I don't think these were around yet. I probably bought that. Well, they might have been. But they maybe weren't as cheap as they are now. I bought that. Again, I bought that. Well, I don't even remember. I don't remember if I bought that before I switched to the 2600 or after, or so let's just say about a year and a half ago. But if I had to buy one now, I would probably just get a WD. Now, there are NVMe versions of these, and there are SATA versions. This one's one of the NVMe ones. Yeah, okay. That's about what I paid for the ADATA one. But honestly, I like ADATA okay, but mine I think is 1700 megabytes per second. I think I paid $60 for it, which a year and a half ago for an NVMe drive, even though it was 1700, that to me that's fast enough. But this one I think is 2400 megabytes per second. So it's a little bit faster. It has a 5-year warranty instead of a 3. I would trust Western Digital more than ADATA if I had to deal with the warranty. These sell a lot. These are really popular. The WD Blue and the WD Black series of SSDs, I think are a lot better than people realize. I don't know how many people know that WD owns SanDisk, but there's a tip for you. Very good SSDs. So I have a Gigabyte RX 570. The dual fan, yeah, it's this one here basically. That's a 4 gig though. Yeah, oh, that's not available anymore. I paid less than $200 for it, and it came with 2 free games. It came with Resident Evil. I got Resident Evil Resident Evil 2 Remake, and The Division 2 or something like that. It was a thing where there was 3 games to choose from, and you got to pick 2 of the 3 games. And at the time, I wanted Resident Evil anyways, and that was like a $60 game. And I think I paid about $140 or $100. It was insanely cheap. Why I bought it. The RX 570 now, it's gone up in price. But when I bought it, let's call it $150. I think it was actually $140, but at $150, it was cheaper than a GTX 1050 Ti at the time. And it was a fair bit faster than a 1050 Ti. It's almost as fast as a 1060 3 gig. Especially in the right game. In a game that uses Vulkan like Doom 2016. I'm going to see what the Asus... Yeah, they've all gone up in price. I shouldn't even put the brand in. I'm just going to put in RX 570 4 gigabyte. Wow, you can't even get one for under $200 now. I find that's hilarious sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, I bought that card a year and a half ago. Maybe less than that. That might have been one of the last things I upgraded, but I can't remember. So that might have been like just like 13 months ago or 14 months ago. But you know what? What is a GTX 1650 Super going for these days? Yeah, see, you can, it's a Zotac. Zotac's not terrible, but most of them are more expensive. It's an ITX, which again would work. Honestly, a 1650 Super, I think, is a little bit faster than the RX 570. So if that was about the same price, or $10 more, or $20 more even, you'd probably want to get that. But in this case, I'm actually just going to go with what I have, which is the 570. This one here. See, they don't have the 4 gig. Oh, yeah, they do. What the heck? The 4 gig's more expensive. I'm just going to go with this one. So a year and a half, well, let's call it 13 or 14 months ago. I bought the 4 gig version from this store, and it was $140 or $150 on sale, and it came with 2 free games. This stuff's funny, you know. Some stuff fluctuates in price. Some stuff's harder to get right now. It's not too hard to get CPUs right now. It's not too hard to get RAM right now, SSDs, cases. But power supplies are very hard to get right now. And motherboards are very hard. AMD motherboards specifically. Like, it's almost impossible to find an X570 motherboard right now. You'll still find some B450s, but a lot of them are going to be micro ATX. The mid-range Aorus kind of, $150 range of board is pretty hard to find too. For storage, we have to add more because I actually have a WD 4 terabyte Geez, again, it doesn't like the space, or the lack of the space. I have a 4 terabyte red. That's about what I paid for it. And then I also have a WD 1 terabyte blue, which is a 7200 RPM. And that's about what I paid for it. What happened here? Why do we have 2? I don't remember adding 2. Delete one of those. So yeah, we have the SSD. We have 2 hard drives. So my 1 terabyte 7200 RPM drive is strictly a game drive. And my 4 terabyte red, which is a slower RPM, is just for raw storage. It's music, movies, pictures, backup stuff. It's not programs that are running off the drive. Okay. Don't have an optical drive. Now, technically, I did pay for my Windows 10 key, but I only paid $20 for it. So I bought it off a friend who, over the years, had collected Windows 10 keys from like Windows 7 updates he had done. So I don't know if I should even put this on here. Why is Windows 10 so expensive? It's just is it the retail one on a USB? Yeah, that's the retail one on a USB stick. Where's the OEM one on a DVD? They only have Windows 10 Pro. So yeah, so I'm not even going to bother with this right now. I paid $20 for my key. Maybe you already have a Windows 10 key. Maybe you have a Windows 7 key lying around. You can try that. Officially, the free upgrades ended a long time ago. But in a lot of cases, if you do a fresh install and put a Windows 7 key in that was never used to do an upgrade, it will still work. So it's kind of like unofficially, it still kind of works. I think that's it, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm not worrying about things like my monitors and my keyboard and mouse and all that right now. I'm just worrying about the actual tower. So yeah, I guess that's it. So that's less than I thought, actually, to be honest. I thought we were going to be around 1,500. Especially with having like 3 drives, but I guess those are so cheap now. Well, and they were when I bought them. Again, most of this is basically what I would have paid for, even at the time, a year and a half ago. I don't know if I switched that to the US right now. Oh, nice. Did it? That doesn't seem right. I think it would be, well, I don't know. I'm going to say you think it'd be even less in US dollars. But, well, I guess we'll round that up to 1,300. I don't know if all of this has free shipping if you were ordering this. Like, for example, the power supply, because of its weight. You know, if that has $15 or $20 of shipping on it. A lot of the stuff, I guess, if you get Amazon Prime, you get free shipping. But I don't even think Amazon has very many power supplies in stock right now. And something like a case would cost a lot to ship if you weren't getting free shipping on it. But everything I bought in stores, in local stores, and this is about what I paid for it. And obviously, I didn't pay shipping. So, yeah, that's very close, I guess, to what I paid for it. If I was building this now, I tried to keep this as close to what I have. In some cases, I guess I had to change slightly, but that's basically what I have now. But if I had to do this now, I would probably go with the 3600. And motherboards are so hard to find right now. Ideally, I would want something in the $150 range, a non-micro Aorus B450 range motherboard. or wait for B550 to come out, which might be in a month or two. So I'm going to keep that on there for now. You're not going to find a nice X570 board for around $150, and honestly, you probably don't need PCI Express 4.0. Personally, I don't need PCI Express 4.0. I mean, the real world difference between a PCI Express 3.0, like a Samsung Evo 970 Evo Plus, and one of the PCI Express 4 NVMe's, most of you, myself included, wouldn't notice the difference. So, yeah, I would get the 3600. Let me double check. B450. The Tomahawk Max is a good board, but it was usually around 150 or 140. So it's gone up in price because it's getting hard to find right now. So even if you can find an X570 board around the 160 range, it's going to be a really low-end one like the UD. The Gigabyte UD non-Aorus one is very, very lame. It's not worth getting over a nice B450 board. I'm going to put the Max on there, I guess. If you get the Tomahawk Max, it's guaranteed that it's going to be 3000 series ready out of the box, but you do have to watch that. If you're getting a 400 series chipset and a 3000 series CPU, you do have to make sure that the BIOS is up to date on this motherboard. And you can't always tell by pictures. You could buy the same motherboard, one from Newegg and one from Amazon. I'm just naming two random places. And you could get one that has the BIOS up to date and it's 3000 series ready, and you could get one that's not, because it depends how long that motherboard's been sitting on the shelf for. So yeah, that's the one advantage to getting an X570 is you pretty much know it's going to work with the 3000, and you can't always say that with the B450s, but the Max kind of is the safe bet there, because there was originally a B450 Tomahawk. And I think it was basically once they were guaranteed all 3000 series ready, and they might have tweaked the VRMs or something a little bit. But basically the Max is the updated version. And I think with the Max, you're basically guaranteed it's going to be 3000 series ready. The RAM, I probably wouldn't change, although maybe I'd just go with 3200 megahertz or something. I do like G-Skill. 16 gigabytes, 3200 megahertz. That's Ripjaw 5, 3200, and it's $10 more or whatever. Not even. I don't remember. So we'll go. I guess I'd go with that. When I bought my RAM was expensive, so I think again I paid $120 for the 3000, but that was a good deal at the time. I would change this around. To be honest, I might keep that the same. You could go with a 512 gig, but I would go with just a standard SATA SSD as a game drive. It's 2.5 times the price or whatever. Instead of $60, spending $160. But having your games on an SSD now in 2020 is definitely worth it. And I cheaped out and I didn't do that, but yeah, a 250 gig or a 512 gig WD Blue. Make sure it's the SN550. There are WD Blue M.2s that are SATA. Not all M.2s are NVMe PCI Express. You got to keep that in mind. I would keep this because I always need lots of storage, lots of pictures and music and movies and stuff. So I would keep that if I was still doing this right now. I wouldn't do that, honestly. Maybe if I really wanted to stick to my AMD guns, but I would probably go with a 1650 Super, to be honest. You got to remember, when I bought my RX 570, it was $150, and nothing was even close. Again, a GTX 1060 at the time was like $300 Canadian. So it was twice the price to get the card that was like the next bump up in performance. Or you were getting, even I think the GTX 1050 Ti at the time when I bought that card was a year and a half ago. The 1600 series weren't out yet. And video cards were still, well, the 1050 Ti for some reason was still expensive. It was too expensive for what it was. At least in Canada. I don't know if that was how it was everywhere. But honestly now, if you're going to spend $220, $230 on an RX 570, just get a 1650 Super. I know user benchmark's not super accurate, but it gives you a quick idea. So they're saying that the 1650 Super is like 27% faster than the 570. That's probably not far off. So to me, it's not worth getting the 570 when it's not like $150. If you're going to spend $220 on one, just get an MSI Gaming X, for example. 1650 Super. I don't know if I would change the cases. I like the P400. Going this route is kind of silly. Most people aren't going to put a Noctua fan on a 212. Oops, what the heck did I just do? Oh, God. CPU cooler. The 212 Black Edition. Well, I guess it's a little bit cheaper than buying the two things separately. And it's all blacked out. So even the aluminum is black, like it been painted or something. And they put caps over the heat pipes where they stick up through the top. So the whole thing's blacked out. And the fan is way better than the fan that comes on the Evo. The fan that comes on the Evo is kind of crappy. So hence I changed it. But that probably makes more sense for most people. It'd be just to get that one. And then if you want RGB, then get the RGB. It's the 212 Black Edition RGB. I guess that's it. So if I was doing it now, what I think realistically most people should get, the 3600 instead of the 2600. Unless you find a really, really good deal on a 2600, like sub $200. A B450 in that price range if you could find it. Or wait for the B550. A 1 terabyte SATA drive, a 1 terabyte SATA SSD as like a dedicated game drive, and a small 250 or 512 gig NVMe SSD as a boot drive. This if you need the storage. Obviously, if you don't need to back up lots of pictures and music and movies and just backup stuff in general for raw storage space, you can get rid of that. 1650 Super, great performing card for the price. So yeah, that is actually like $200 more, and you're getting an SSD game drive instead of a hard drive, and you're getting the 3600, which is faster than the 2600, and you're getting the 1650 Super, which is faster than an RX 570. Whatever. Anyways, this has been fun. PCPartPicker's kind of, it's an easy way to keep track of everything. Even if you don't buy it from where it tells you to buy it, maybe you're planning on buying it all from one place anyways. I guess you could adjust that, but as a way to just keep track of everything, I don't need to worry about what's compatible because I I know that. And you can't always 100% trust this. I've seen, for example, people buy a full ATX case and like an SFX power supply. And some of the SFX power supplies come with a bracket that you can mount the smaller power supply in a bigger case. But some of them don't. So, for example, the SF450, no, Corsair SF, it just comes up like that. See, I know the 750 one comes with a bracket, but I don't think the 600 one does. Let's just see if we add that. See, it's not mentioning that power supply might not fit. That's an SFX power supply. It's a lot smaller than a standard ATX. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think anything below the 750 comes with the bracket. I think in some cases you could put an SFX power supply on there that technically wouldn't mount into your ATX case, and it might not catch that. So it's pretty good most of the time, but it's not going to catch everything. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, it's fun to play with, and it certainly helps keep track of everything and pick out what you want, even if you're not going to get it from where it recommends.